So, the hidden cost of fuzzy boundaries in leadership and how to set boundaries that actually work is what we're going to be talking about today. So, today we're going to cover, you know, what is the cost? What are some of the things that we're doing in our communication that we may not be aware of as we're wanting to communicate boundaries, and what to do instead? So my name's Melissa. I'm an executive coach and a management consultant, and I'm here today with my colleague Kay. She is part of my team. And in case you're just getting to know us or you're new to us, I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. So for myself, I am a coach. So what it looks like is I'm working with managers, with leaders, with executives day in and day out. And I help them really look at how they're communicating, how they're influencing, so boosting their influence, really empowering employees to become self-managed and create self-managed, high-performing teams. And when they do that, what they have as a result is trust in their team, the ability to walk away because their team are doing exactly what they need to be doing. So we're getting the results, but we're also getting our time back. And as leaders, there is a lot that we're responsible for. There is a lot on our plate, from, strategy to operations, and between delivery, the output, to taking care of people. We're responsible for all of those pieces and everything in between. So the more self-managed your employees can be, the more engaged they are, the more you're able to take care of what's actually on your desk.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, Kay, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your thoughts on this.
Yeah, definitely. So, everyone, hi, I'm Kay. I'm a client solutions specialist at In Charge Coaching. And what that means is every day I have the privilege of connecting with beautiful, incredible leaders and sharing proven strategies, equipping them with information they need to help build like strong, empowering cultures, create workplaces where teams feel supported and inspired to do their work. And yeah, that's me.
Yeah. And it sounds so simple, but what Kay's really doing behind the scenes is those connection points, is really moving information around and making sure that those pieces of information gets in the right hands,
Yeah.
and people are supported. She is responsible for these lives and for putting on the masterclass that we're having next week. So if you have been interested in the masterclass, I can tell you a little bit about that today in this training. So I'll kind of circle back to the masterclass at the end of the training. If you are interested in the Boundaries and Balance masterclass, how great leaders are getting respected across the organization without losing themselves, without burning out, you can sign up. It is free. It's happening next week on Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So for my Atlantic folks, that will be 1 p.m. It's a 2-hour masterclass where we're going to be diving into more of how to set boundaries, how to communicate boundaries, and really get that respect that you're craving, and protect your energy and your well-being so that this year can be your year. Bring in all of those pieces that's going to be feeding you as a leader as well, not just giving it all away. So Kate,
Mhm.
would you mind dropping the link to that across the channels for anyone who wants to register? So if you are interested, just keep an eye on the comments. We're going to be dropping the link here in a few minutes. All
Absolutely.
right, so back to boundaries. So let me tell you how we're like on this topic of boundaries. When we do live trainings like these, I typically bring in the training that mirrors the work that I'm doing behind the scenes with clients. And boundaries has been something that's been consistent in my coaching sessions in the past year. So when we were talking just before ending the year about what is needed, what is really the gap that leaders are needing these days, Boundary was top of that list. And what's happening as things are evolving, the landscape of work has been evolving enormously. If you're not aware of it, open your eyes. Things have changed. Not just because of the pandemic, things were already changing beforehand, but now we see an acceleration. And there's that change, that acceleration, the hybrid teams, the remote working, the new expectations that employees have of leaders, the new awareness around what leaders should and shouldn't be. Um, that's creating a lot of pressure for leaders. There's pressure, there's new expectations, but there's also a lot more managing and leadership needed because people are working from a distance. So we have to put in more effort in order to get the same stuff done. And so it's important to realize that as we're doing that, if we were burning out before, we're definitely burning out today. And a burnt out leader does not produce any results. So protecting your energy and being balanced yourself allows you to bring that energy forward and actually show up for your people and create the balance externally, the balance that they need to get the work done. And so what lack of boundaries is doing, right? It is creating burnout, because if we say yes to everything and we are everything to everyone, there's only so much of us to go around. So we're dealing with burnout with a never-ending to-do list, and it's exhausting. We are exhausted. It's creating disengagement, disengagement for ourselves, disengagement for employees. Kay, have you ever worked for a burnt out manager, leader?
Well, yes,
And we haven't
definitely.
talked about this, I'm curious.
Yeah, definitely. I have worked with a manager. So I think working there, everything felt very urgent. Like everything needs to be done fast. For example, like, last time I was not consistent about, like, let's say sending emails and after hours unless it's urgent. But there was a pressure to almost do everything urgently, and it almost created a chaos in my mind because the boundaries were not communicated well. So it felt like you have to be present 24/7 and need to be working 24/7. And that burned me out as well. So it was like a very domino effect.
Yeah. And when we're not feeling it, that burnout is affecting our motivation, it's affecting our disengagement or engagement levels.
Mm-hmm.
And when everything becomes urgent, like you said, what's happening is we're tired. And when we're tired, we're a little bit more reactive, right? We have less energy to think ahead. So we're
Yeah.
reactive. It puts everyone around us in that state of reaction. So we're no longer being proactive. There's like almost a desperation to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it really affects our ability to meet our goals. How can we deliver a quality a product on time, the right quantity, when we're reacting to everything around us and we're in this state of chaos? So this is what boundaries does. It protects us against these things and keep us in a state of responsiveness, of balance, of ability to manage the unpredictability in the workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that are coming up for you as we're talking about, starting to talk about this effect of lack of boundaries in the workplace? What are you noticing?
Yeah, well, I think what's coming up for me is how much boundaries can affect the overall working relationship between a leader or a manager and their team. For me, like, for example, it felt unclear, boundaries felt chaotic for me. So you're just left guessing what's expected instead of being told what's expected, which can lead to frustration or even resentment. So I feel like when boundaries are clear, it creates a sense of structure and respect, and you know where you stand. and that makes it easier to focus on doing your best work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if we think of those leaders that we truly respect, those are leaders that are clear on their boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that first happens internally, and then it can be communicated externally.
Yeah.
So in terms of communication, we do a lot of things around boundaries. We contort ourselves in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Internally, and then externally, it comes out all kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to communicate boundaries. We are uncomfortable, just generally speaking, people are uncomfortable sharing their boundaries. Um, First, we are not clear. So often we lack clarity. So if we
Mm-hmm.
lack clarity and we're lacking clarity in our communication, it means our employee is not going to be very clear on what you're talking about. What are you actually saying?
Yeah.
The second thing we do is we apologize. And please raise your hand because we are all guilty of apologizing, right? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but this is what
Mm-hmm.
we want to say. I'm sorry, but.
Mm-hmm.
And really, a boundary is a boundary, and you don't need to apologize for a boundary. It's there for a reason, and it should be on purpose, intentional. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to apologize for that piece. The other thing we do is we waver. Yeah, okay, well, so we're not standing firm, we're wavering. So we're saying it, but we're not really saying it. And then the next thing we tend to do is we say too much.
Mm-hmm.
We start saying the boundary, but then we feel the need to explain it. We feel the need to defend it and rationalize it. And what happens when we do that, Kay? When we start explaining and apologizing for our boundaries.
Well, you kind of like self dismiss your own boundaries, and that's never a good thing.
Yeah. You're really opening yourself up for all of a sudden having a power struggle around your boundaries. And if your
Mm-hmm.
boundaries are non-negotiables, don't negotiate them.
Yeah.
Some boundaries are flexible. Some boundaries have some flex. So that's something we're going to cover in the masterclass, the difference between non-negotiable boundaries and flexible boundaries. What else do? We get clear on boundaries, and then we have like a big boundary dump, like this, that, and the other thing. So we're trying to like make all these changes, not necessarily changes. Maybe it was always a boundary you had, but it feels like a change for the person who's listening.
Mm-hmm.
Because up until this point, you didn't enforce anything. You didn't keep anyone accountable. So it was acceptable. The behavior was acceptable. And all of a sudden, you're telling me it's not. And not just this thing, but that thing and that thing and that thing. So on the receiving end, it's going to be hard to make all of those changes at once. And then as we're doing all of that, there's a tendency to become aggressive instead of assertive, because
Mm-hmm.
we are not feeling safe, and we're feeling this frustration around it. So we tend to be a little bit more on the aggressive side, not on purpose, not on purpose. And then we have the inconsistency. So we're going to state our boundary, we're going to say what it is, and then the next day I'm not going to enforce it. And then I'll
Mm.
enforce it the next week, but not enforce it the third week.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that happen.
Yeah. So which one is it, right? Is it this or is it that? Do we know?
Yeah.
So Kay, what are some of the communication mishaps that you are aware of or you've noticed, either from yourself or from other people?
Well, from other people, like from in my previous company that I worked with, I've noticed like sending emails late at night and expecting like last minute tasks to be completed without any notice, which created a lot of stress because there was no clarity on what was urgent versus what could wait. So that is something that I've noticed like
So that's
happened.
lack
Yeah,
of clarity again.
yeah,
And there's
yeah.
almost like a two-way boundary, right? What is the boundary for the manager or the leader, and what's the boundary for
Mhm.
the employee?
Yeah. Yep.
And so as we're doing all of these things, we might find it hard to get that respect. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we'll be in that situation where I feeling like our boundaries aren't being respected, but not really understanding why, or feeling like I've communicated it. So what's the problem? Like it's been communicated.
Mm-hmm.
So why isn't it being respected? And that is a very legit feeling. It is normal to feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And there are reasons why these boundaries aren't being respected. So I'd like to cover that. I'd like to kind of walk you through the reasons or the main reasons why. And the first reason, and this one, I hope that you're taking notes on this one, it's because you're not respecting your boundaries.
Yeah, that's the most important one.
Does that resonates, Kate?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. People pleaser.
So if we're waffling within ourselves, and we're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well, this is my boundary, but maybe or maybe not, or I may or may not follow through on this, um, nobody else is going to respect it. It's really
Mhm.
up to you to respect your boundary. And you're going to disrespect your boundaries in these very subtle ways. You're not even realizing you're doing it. Okay.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
example, if you are if you are saying, okay, my boundary is like 5 o'clock, I'm out, and I'm not communicating. This is a boundary that I need for right now. I'm not doing any overtime. Then if you get, if you go through your family routine, you put the kids to bed, and then you check your inbox, and then you have an idea and you send a message to an employee and thinking like, oh, that's not a problem. They'll see it when they see it, but I just want to get this out of my head. What you've done, if you just told that employee, because the employee is going to see the timestamp, and the employee is going to be like, oh, that's not really a thing.
Yeah.
Because here we have 9:28, an email from you. You're still working after 5.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the little subtle ways that we don't respect our own boundaries. Last year, I'll just share one of mine. Last year, I decided I was going to work out, and I had it in my calendar, and it was there in my calendar. And every single one of my employees knew that in that time block, I was not working out, I was working.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Real thing. And what I've done as of January, I have a workout time block, and I'm actually
Yeah.
working out it as a non-negotiable, to the point of Gislain put a meeting for us in my calendar, and it overlapped my workout. And I sent him a message and I said, hey, I'm just noticing this meeting. I'll be there for the first half hour, but then I'll need to head out.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, workout? Question mark. And I said, yes. And so he decided to move that meeting. to accommodate that. But now he knows, fully
Yeah.
respected. And he actually checked in on me today. If you're watching, Shisna, are you doing that every day? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So because I'm respecting my boundary, it's easier for other people to respect my boundary.
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, like, look at yourself.
Absolutely.
Second is not holding people accountable. And accountability is one of those things that's really, like speaking the boundary, the follow through. It's a little uncomfortable to have that conversation with someone, to say, hey, I communicated my boundary. Um, maybe something needs to be clarified here.
Mm-hmm.
So that follow up and really keeping people accountable to your boundaries is
Yeah.
important. Because if you're not pushing back, if you're not reaffirming your boundary, if you're not saying, hey, this thing that just happened, that's not okay, it will be interpreted as acceptance. Well, nothing bad happened, therefore it must be okay. And so we're back to this, like, oh, you're inconsistent because you're saying it, but you're not really enforcing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only person who can enforce it is yourself. So we're back to, this is something that's within your control.
Yeah.
The third thing we do is we apologize. I'm so sorry. I wish I didn't have to. Well, we're saying there's something, the communication there is there's something wrong with this boundary. That's what the listener's hearing. So don't apologize. Next is too much flex. So if we're all over the place, if we're too accommodating around this boundary, then it's okay. She says that it's okay to sometimes step out of it or step over it because she's good like that. She's so accommodating.
Yeah.
So accommodating. You speak in uncertain terms. If you don't say what you mean very specifically, people don't actually understand what you're saying. If you're speaking about things in a roundabout way, we don't really know what we're respecting.
Mm-hmm.
Because what that means for me and what that means for you is not the same. We even just look at the definition of respect. What is respect? Every time I explore that question with someone, people have different answers about what is respect. So if I say, I'm not okay with being criticized. What is criticism to you versus what do I perceive as criticism? We have a different picture in our mind of what that means. So you might be not criticizing me based on the picture that you have of what is criticism in your mind, but I could still feel like you're criticizing me. I should still be perceiving it and feeling disrespected.
Yeah.
And you don't know the difference. You think I'm respecting based on that picture that you have in your mind. So the specificity or the lack of specificity is another reason why we're not being respected. And last but not least is not speaking it. Have you ever found yourself like psyching yourself out, like, oh, I'm going to say this and I'm very clear, and I'm like, ooh, and I think about it all night and I run through it over and over and over in my mind, and then you show up to have a conversation and you don't say it?
Mm.
Or you've said it between the lines. It is not, if you haven't said it specifically, if you haven't verbalized it, it doesn't exist. It does not exist. You can tell I'm a little animated today about this topic.
Yeah.
What's coming up for you, Kay, as we're running through like
Mhm.
respecting and why people aren't respecting boundaries?
Well, a very specific example is coming to my mind.
Yeah.
So, like, we have this master class coming up next week, and it's a busy time for all of us. So, I think yesterday is when we spoke about this. Like, Melissa, I don't think I ever told you this as well. But yesterday, you asked me about the number of hours that I'm going to put in. So, what really stood out to me is that instead of just assuming that I would put in extra hours, you asked me directly if it was something I could take on right now, and you didn't just like dump tasks on me or expect me to read your mind. You communicated clearly and gave me the space to say what I needed. So I feel like that approach made me feel respected and valued, and it wasn't about setting boundaries for yourself and ignoring mine. It was like finding a balance that worked for both of us.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's how boundaries are respected, and like that impacted me. Like, you also considered how it is impacting me, and that approach, that entire approach, made it easier for me to say that, hey, I can manage this, and it like motivated me to or just made me feel supported and not burdened. So
Yeah.
yeah, like, just an example, like the opposite of what you asked, but like just an example to bring out how boundaries can be respected and communicated well.
Absolutely. And in a sense, you didn't really perceive that I presented a boundary, but I was also talking about my boundaries through it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I wasn't like, hey, I have a boundary here, like I'm putting up a wall.
Yeah.
We created a bridge on, how do we want to work together, and how are we going to stay balanced through going through this masterclass? Because it is,
Mhm.
added work. There's more moving parts, and we want to be doing it all well and not burning ourselves out in the process.
Yeah.
And so I'm aware of that for myself. I brought awareness to you, and we created a bridge. And I
Mhm.
think this really segments really well into the what to do instead. If we
Mhm.
are falling in this trap, what can we do? And we're just going to go back to that as the example. Be direct.
Mhm.
Did I waffle in any way? You know,
Mhm. No.
how
Yeah.
many hours are you working? How many hours are you comfortable working? How are you
Mhm.
feeling at this time? How will you know? Right? And then I talked about
Yeah.
myself, what I'm comfortable with, what I'm not comfortable with, how much overtime I can do.
Mhm.
So that's something we were very direct on.
Mhm.
We were firm
Yeah.
and firm, be assertive, stand in your truth. Second, the third will be following through, right? When you do feel, we talked about when you feel imbalanced. If I feel imbalanced, we're going to communicate. That
Yeah.
follow through is going to be really important to show each other that we're actually. But if I start feeling unbalanced and don't say anything, and you are starting feeling unbalanced and don't say anything,
Mhm.
now we're no longer respecting our boundaries. It's going
Yeah.
to be hard for me to respect your boundaries if you're not communicating them, or vice versa.
Mhm.
Fourth point, make it collaborative. beautiful example of making this collaborative. We did not put up walls, and you don't need to fight to tear down walls when you're not putting up a wall, but instead you're focusing on building a bridge. How can we work together? I'm not okay with this, but I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a hard no for me, and I'm flexible in these ways. How about you? Right? We're creating a bridge on how to work together, and that's what makes us stronger.
Yeah.
And we need to model it, right? We need to model that respect. When you're modeling respecting yourselves, it's easy for me to respect you.
Mm-hmm.
So respect yourself and model it. So if you want to know more about the do's and don'ts around boundaries, if you want to learn exactly how to clarify a boundary, how to determine what it is, how to create that internal alignment with boundaries so you can speak and communicate these boundaries with confidence, with assertiveness, because it is, and these are non-negotiables. If you want your boundaries to work, you need to be really, really anchored and aligned in your boundaries to communicate them. That is what we're going to cover in the masterclass next week. So it's happening Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Atlantic for 2 hours. Come and join me. We're going to be taking a deep dive. We're going to have some fun, some laughs, maybe a few tears together. But you're going to be, no matter what, you're going to be walking away with clarity, internal clarity about your own boundaries, and some strategies to start communicating them very effectively. All right. I want you to kick off 2025 with protecting your energy, protecting yourself, and creating that balance you need so that you can be the leader that you want to be. So boundaries and balance masterclass, join me next week. You can RSVP by using the link below, and it's completely free. Let's do it.
Doesn't matter.
All right, and if you've been watching this video, please drop a comment. Let me know what resonated. What was the nugget that you're taking away that is meaningful to you and that's going to make a difference? So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
See you.